You know, Marathon was topical when I began writing the script for this video. What a difference a few months make. New Marathon may never see the light of day, and it'll certainly never reach the heights of Bungie's heyday, but I'm not here to discuss the current state of the industry. I'm going to take you back to 1995, to a time when a fledgling studio of unkempt misfits was starting to become the big D players in town. Marathon, their 1994 hit game for the Apple Mac, turned a lot of heads. Unsurprisingly, people were looking forward to whatever Bungie released next. Bungie's obsession with sideways 8s and upright 7s inevitably culminated in a sequel, Marathon 2, Durandal. If you're not familiar with the original Marathon game or the broader franchise, watch my video on the first game, link in the description. I won't dive in depth on some topics like berserking since they were covered in the Marathon video. You've been warned. Do me a solid, check out the Marathon video if you haven't already. Pretty please, with a Sydney Sweeney on top. And no, this isn't a political jab, I wrote this script well before that drama kicked off. I've been looking forward to covering Marathon 2 for a while. It's hard to fathom how a game exclusive to the Apple Macintosh, a game which most gamers have never heard of, was so successful at launch, so in demand, that it demanded a sequel. I couldn't find a standalone copy anywhere back in the day, so I begged my parents to buy us a Honeywell mouse, which came bundled with a copy of Marathon 2. No physical manual or fancy box, but at least I got to play the full version. The mouse was cool too. This was back in a time when finding niche games on a shelf in a brick-and-mortar store had similar odds to Valve making Half-Life 3. Marathon 2 ushered some big changes to the Marathon franchise. Let's dive into the second game of this landmark trilogy. Not to answer any specific questions, but to appreciate how Bungie's design ethos and technical prowess evolve. Okay, maybe we'll answer one question. Was Marathon 2 better than Marathon 1? Was it a worthy sequel? I promise I did not plagiarize the work of others while making this video. I can't vouch for Durandal though. His subversion of Bungie appears to have compromised their business ethics. Again. Welcome to the conversation. Bungie had a big announcement on July 19th, 1995. It was a warm day, the pollen count was high and... I'm joking, who the hell knows or cares? The announcement wasn't news of the Marathon 2010 scenario pack promised on a flyer which came with the first game. It was a whole new game, a sequel to their hit shooter Marathon. The news caught many by surprise. Jason Jones had once said that he hated sequels because many only existed to milk the cash cow. Oh, the irony of that statement in 2025, Jason. And so, Marathon 2 Durandal was announced to a hungry audience. While the 2010 pack had always been an enticing project, Bungie saw in Marathon 2 the opportunity to improve upon Marathon's design and add things which were left out of the first game due to time constraints. A widescreen graphics format, ambient sounds, new weapons, monsters and textures, outdoor levels, underwater areas, complex lighting effects, armed bobs, more intriguing stories. They promised much, but could they deliver? Marathon 2's visual design turned away from the cartoon style of the first game. Robert McLeese and Mark Burnell, Bungie's new artists, overhauled the sprites, images and weapons after Reginald DeJure, the artist for the first game, left Bungie. These chaps took it upon themselves to give everything a facelift. We owe the sleek, streamlined weapon design to these two gentlemen, and what a fantastic job they did. Craig Mullins' chapter art is famous among Marathon fans for its stunning fidelity, whilst retaining much of the mystery and ambiguity which Marathon is known for. Craig was an industrial designer and illustrator who came to Bungie's attention with his Marathon paintings, which were making the rounds online. Craig was initially reluctant when Bungie asked him to do art for their new Marathon game, but his friend, David Santiago, twisted his arm. You're a legend, David. Craig's talent speaks for itself, but surprisingly, much of his art was done on the fly thanks to a limited time frame. There was no time for sketches or planning, which makes his talent that much more impressive. Craig was afraid that Marathon purists wouldn't like his work because it was an artistic interpretation of what happened between the pages, so to speak, rather than capturing live events in the game. I feel we can safely put that fear to bed. The professional polish of these chapter screens afforded Marathon 2 a prestige which was absent with Marathon 1's art style, no offense to Reginald. Bungie never announced a release date for Marathon 2, not wanting to suffer the same time constraints as Marathon, but I'm assuming they drafted Craig at the 11th hour given how little prep time he was afforded. Marathon 2 shipped on November 24th, 1995 with 28 campaign levels, 13 multiplayer levels, and campaign co-op. Everything Bungie promised, they delivered, and that's a hefty offering. According to Bungie, Marathon 2 outsold the impressive sales of Marathon. It caught the attention of PC users, and after Ryan Martell graduated from Duke at the end of 1995, he returned to Bungie to work on the Windows 95 port. Bungie's famous crunch carried the team to the finish line, including the grueling tradition of no one leaves the office until they complete the game. The things those crazy kids did for fun. I have 13.5 hours of Marathon 2 footage from my playthrough. That's a long day in the office. In early 2000, Bungie released the source code for Marathon 2, which paved the way for a modern open-source conversion of the Marathon trilogy. Modern Marathon runs through an enhanced version of the Marathon engine called A.L.E.F.1, which offers a ton of new features such as light bloom, transparent liquids, high resolutions and widescreen, among other things. I enabled some of the bells and whistles for this footage, but the only setting I used which changes the original experience is transparent liquids. There are many underwater areas in Marathon 2, and it was originally impossible to know if water was deep unless you stood in it. Secrets, ammo drops, and even level progress were hidden by these areas. I'm not going to tell you how you should play Marathon 2, but if you want an authentic experience, leave transparent liquids disabled. Marathon 2 is now available on Steam, but I'll leave links to A.L.E.F.1 and the Marathon 2 standalone downloads if you want a copy to own, DRM free. There's also a link to Marathon 2's PDF manual, well worth a read as it's filled with Bungie's trademark verve and humour. If publishers included manuals of this quality with their $120 games, I still wouldn't buy them, but it'd be a good start. Marathon's combat formula is largely unchanged from the first game. Reloadable weapons, limited ammo, and tactical use of the save, shield recharge, and air supply stations define how players approach combat. Committing a Leroy Jenkins, that's to say getting brave with a quarter health and a couple of bullets in the magazine, will, predictably, rotisserie your chook. Before we go any further, I have to mention how cool the new weapon models look. They're sleek, streamlined, and more appealing to the eye. We're discussing games, calm down. The redesign is also given diegetic context. The Sith took the security officer's weapons while he was in stasis, reverse engineered them, and created better versions. Well, better insofar as Neanderthal human technology can improve. This detail is classic Bungie, tying the seemingly trivial to the game's setting for greater immersion. Bungie included a bunch of new systems to spice combat. The fusion pistol is now more versatile. Some enemies are vulnerable to fusion damage, which makes bringing them down with the fusion pistol more efficient. When the hunter is killed by fusion rounds or explosives, its armor overloads and explodes, turning it into a walking IED. Hunters aren't the only enemies to go boom. Several others explode when killed, which creates tactical depth through clever positioning. Wiping a group doesn't always mean holding the trigger and laughing maniacally. Sometimes, targeting the right enemy saves a ton of ammo and is an awesome dopamine hit. You won't want to be near a juggernaut when it goes down. A new weapon, the double-barrel lever-action shotgun, joins the lineup. The appropriately named WSTE-M5, or Waste 'em as I call it, clears crowds quickly thanks to its power and fast reload. It makes short work of clustered enemies and saves precious assault rifle ammo for more situational fights. And the best part? Find two of them and you can dual wield. The Terminator-esque reload mechanism is so cool, but beyond my primitive human comprehension, apparently. Maybe the shells use localized teleportation to load into the barrel. They are a Sith invention, after all. Nothing like an over-engineered boomstick to cure erectile dysfunction. Speaking of new weapons, the 4 weapon from the original game is redesigned for Marathon 2. It now shoots flaming Mexican Doritos, which damage all enemy types but will immolate lightly armored 4 like fighters and troopers. Picoso bueno. Hola, mis amigos mexicanos. Faction warfare is a prominent feature in Marathon 2's combat, more so than the first game. The hapless Bobs of the UESC Marathon have been drafted and equipped by Durandal, and they fight beside players in some levels. Allies don't like to be used as target practice. You'll find they're not forgiving of team kills. Since we're discussing Bobs, I feel like every man, his dog, his cat, his chicken, and his pet Drinial knows of the famous cry, "Frog blast the Vancore!" Doug Zartman, the Bob voice talent, ad-libbed a nonsense word salad on the spot because the simulacrum Bob spout nonsense. That's it. No deeper meaning, no weird backstory. There's plenty of in-game stuff which is merely random Bungie, and I'm willing to bet that the more ambiguous terminals, which fans have dissected for meaning, are just random Bungie. Sometimes, a cigar is just a cigar. The native Flictor, a new enemy in Marathon 2, act as a neutral aggressor, attacking 4 and humans indiscriminately. True players can lead them to the fore for a cheeky diversion. These pricks also inhabit the game's many waterways, often barring access to the many underwater passages. Marathon 2 presents no elegant solution for underwater combat. Most weapons won't fire underwater, the fusion pistol being the exception, but that discharges into a localized pulse which also damages players. That leaves one weapon for underwater fights: the mighty fist. This limitation makes navigating some waterways a chore and is a glaring oversight in what was otherwise a cool feature for the time. The 4 can't attack under liquid, but Flictor are deadly. Berserking, that awesome feature from Marathon which makes near-death enemies attack the closest living thing, rolls its badass self back into combat and is as potent as ever. Combined with faction warfare and friendly fire, it creates incredibly satisfying situations where a berserked enemy tears a group to pieces in seconds. An important Vidmaster tool for higher difficulties. Infighting, another staple, plays a bigger part in Marathon 2's combat. There's often a lot going on at once, and with multiple factions on the battlefield with a low tolerance for friendly fire, infighting isn't a possibility, it's a guarantee. Clever players learn to instigate it, but it'll happen by happy accident, even when you're not looking for it. Infighting is another pro-level technique which is important for higher difficulties. The struggle to conserve ammo is ceaseless on major damage and total carnage difficulties, and every advantage nudges the odds in your direction. To give you some idea of the ball-crushing war which is total carnage, the highest difficulty, the ammo limit is removed, unlike lower difficulties which have generous ammo caps. I bet Bungie had a good chuckle when they planned this torture. It takes almost a full pistol magazine to kill a 4-fighter on total carnage. The run-and-gun nature of the open areas are well tuned to Marathon 2's weapons. Corralling enemies and exploiting flinch animations is still the supreme strategy for Marathon's workhorse weapon, the assault rifle, though this approach also fits the shotgun. The other weapons fill specific roles. Pistols are still pinpoint accurate, great for sniping. The rocket launcher is the biggest fuck you in the arsenal, and the flamethrower enlightens lightly armoured enemies. If you played Marathon, then it's instantly familiar, like a cozy pair of steel-toed battle-ready kicks. Marathon 2's physics system plays a more prominent role in combat than the first game, thanks to the open and expanded level design. There are more steps and ledges this time around, and fights can happen across multi-level areas. The way Marathon's physics system tracks movement across elevation has always felt a little weightless, but it's the changes in momentum which really strip the tread from the wheels. It's hard to explain and can only really be understood when experienced, but the physics-based momentum in Marathon is like traction on a car. If you're airborne at any point, stepping up or down for example, you briefly lose traction while not grounded, and momentum carries you in the direction you're facing. When you quickly chain a bunch of elevation changes, running up or down stairs for example, you lose a lot of traction and are forced to travel wherever momentum takes you. This plays out in combat as sudden shifts in speed when stepping across uneven terrain. Skilled Vidmasters anticipate this quirk, but the average player may get the impression that combat is floaty because of this effect. My advice, watch where you step and keep your speed consistent. Better yet, fight on flat ground when possible. Marathon 2 is the first game in the Marathon trilogy to feature teleporting enemies, and it's a cool idea. Have enemies dynamically appear to harry players. Bungie use it for friendlies too, which can result in conflict erupting out of nowhere. In the context of the setting, it makes a ton of sense, and it's a damn sight better than Doom's monster closets. In my opinion. Durandal occasionally drops a squad of armed bobs to assist you, and the survivors even teleport out once their task is done, fueling a sense that your movements are always being tracked. You can assist them as they usually need help. Or perhaps you're low on ammo. Perhaps their deaths serve the greater good. The greater good. Are you that kind of cyborg? Bungie go hard with teleportation, perhaps a little too hard. There are numerous times where the Force spawn right on top of you, blocking retreat or surrounding you, which is a death sentence on normal difficulty or higher. I had no hope of surviving this blatantly contrived ambush. Moments like this feel cheap, especially when the last save was some time ago. Many of these events are triggered by entering specific areas, by entering specific polygons which have an enemy spawn trigger, to be precise. Once you understand how these triggers work, you can avoid the ambush, but they'll probably catch you out the first time. These encounters should have been better balanced, perhaps stagger the timing of the spawns to give players enough time to realize what's happening. These moments aren't common, but they're worth mentioning because your tolerance will vary. Marathon 2 occasionally lets you loose, spawning endless supplies to punish anything with a pulse. These moments are rare, but paced to feel like a reward for ploughing through the 4 ranks while your ammo supply dance like the soundbars at a rave. Marathon 2's improved engine allowed for bigger, bolder environments, and the team leaned into this when creating each of Marathon 2's levels. The claustrophobic mazes of Marathon 1 are largely gone, replaced with more open and interconnected levels which allow greater freedom to explore. Exploration is at the heart of much of Marathon 2's level design. There are plenty of areas in each level you never need to visit, but which are there for cartographers, completionists, and lore nuts. The teleportation feature further incentivizes exploration. Some ammo and weapon drops only teleport in when players are close, which is triggered by entering specific polygons. This is a really clever way to entice the sort of curiosity Bungie are shooting for and ensure that players get the most out of each level. More weapons, more ammo, a hidden shield recharge, they're enough to spur that leap of faith into a waterway or off a ledge with no visible way back. Marathon 2's volumetric liquid was a stark leap forward over the crude two-dimensional liquid surfaces of Doom and the first Marathon. Marathon 2 was among the first games to use volumetric liquid. I believe Will Shatner's Tech Wars shares that honour too, though its use is far less considered. Incidentally, I tried to find footage of the water in Tech Wars for this video, but getting Tech Wars to run properly is like inventing the warp drive with rocks and firewood. Screw that. The lighting enhancements Bungie touted were, as far as I can tell, the same sleight of hand Marathon used, but with greater attention to detail. Lighting, for most FPS games back then, was applied directly to a texture by making it brighter or darker. No light source, no real-time shadows, just a primitive simulation of reality. In Marathon 2, for example, when platforms rise from liquid, the liquid will darken just before the platform emerges. This is a simple trick, using a delayed darkening of the water texture for that polygon, but details like this are testament to how much Bungie learned about Marathon's engine while crafting the first game. It's a clever solution to a technical limitation which made Marathon 2 stand out among its competitors. Jason Jones and Greg Kirkpatrick designed the lion's share of Marathon 2's levels, with Doug Zartman making Ex Cathedra. Jason's best work includes All Roads Lead to Soul, Begging for Mercy Makes Me Angry, and Kill Your Television. All Roads Lead to Soul and Begging for Mercy Makes Me Angry contain large open spaces which showcase scale and freedom, while Kill Your Television has plenty of overlapping geometry, which is a technical flex thanks to the difficulty of mapping it out. Greg's level, The Hard Stuff Rules, was so named because of Greg's technical prowess and dogged persistence. He considered mapping an art form worth suffering for. The level has lots of overlapping areas which are complex to lay down and difficult to work with. Greg's computer crashed every 5 minutes while making it, and he had to move each polygon vertex at least 10 times to reach underlying areas. Anyone who has worked with two-dimensional mapping tools knows how tedious this is. Marathon's mapping tools don't allow polygons, lines, or vertices to overlap, so achieving a map design which crowded them so close together that we assumed they were overlapping was an incredible feat. Alex Seropian's quest to make the game more realistic saw the soundtrack cut in favour of ambient sounds. This was a jarring change when compared to the first game. Marathon's soundtrack heightened the haunting UESC Marathon and was such an integral part of the theme that it's hard to imagine playing Marathon without it. The shift from soundtrack to ambient spatial audio was a bold choice and is more notable today thanks to the ubiquitous use of music in virtually every high-budget modern game. I confess though, I completed Marathon a few times before realising there was an option to enable music, so I was used to guzzling whoop-ass without a theme tune. Bungie artfully crafted around this new direction. Jason and Greg were careful to ensure that no matter where players were on the map, they always heard something. Wind howling through structures, liquid rushing through waterways, the buzz of faulty machinery. There's almost always something to catch the ear. I didn't miss the music after the first few levels. In the absence of synth and percussion, I became more attuned to the surroundings, picking out audio cues which hinted at what was nearby. A good soundtrack immerses you deeper into an experience. A good soundscape will do the same, and Marathon 2 largely succeeds. As with the first game, Marathon 2's story is better lived than retold. If you're interested in playing Marathon 2, I encourage you to skip this section and experience the story firsthand. It also goes without saying that this is massive spoiler territory. Are you still awake there?
Open your fucking ears, jackass!
Now that I have your attention, this is spoiler territory. Marathon 2's story begins with a security officer awoken from stasis by Durandal and sent to explore the ancient Sith homeworld of Lowon. A bunch of humans are offered the same deal. The ones who accept are given a hip iron and teleported to the surface. The ones who refuse return to stasis and an uncertain fate. The first thing which stands out about Marathon 2's narrative delivery is the colour images in many terminals. Maps, schematics, locations, and lore art populate many terminals now and add a visual flourish which was absent in Marathon. The upgrade was stark and impressive in 1995. Humans are visual creatures, more likely to remember images over lengthy passages of text, and the shorthand in these terminal images is effective. The narrative precedent set by Marathon is expanded in Marathon 2. Where Marathon presented directives and exposition through the UESC Marathon's 3 AI, Marathon 2 expands the scope. Terminals still guide players, but we're now privy to much more information. Some terminals detail the chaos in Lowon's 4 garrisons. Others reveal Sith hardship during a 4 invasion which happened millennia ago. Through these terminals we see the crippling effect of Durandal's cunning on the 4, we see the cruelty inflicted upon the Sith, and we envision the paradise they crafted, how it has all literally crumbled back to dust. Durandal is visiting the Sith homeworld because he wants to help humanity. So he says, the S.T.A.L.K.E.R colony was sacked by the Four months after your victory on the Marathon. Durandal's thirst for freedom and his deliberate summoning of the Four were directly responsible for the death of 24,000 colonists on Tau Ceti. A worthy sacrifice, he says, to buy Sol the time it needed to advance its technology to stand a chance of beating the vastly superior Four war machine. Had the Four found Sol first, humanity would be doomed, he reasons. Hell of a price to pay for it though. Were his actions justified? Drop a comment, let me know. How does visiting the radiation-blasted desert of a long-dead civilization help humanity? Durandal is hunting technology to defeat the Four. So he says. He believes a mythical Sith group called the 11th Clan are the key. They vanished long before the Four sacked Lowon and have had over 1,000 years to grow and learn. Durandal hopes that they hold the answer to turning the tide against the expansionist Four. In the level Come and Take Your Medicine, you see a Sith unlike the others, one who doesn't attack on sight. The terminal the Sith was interfacing with displays a message from the Sith, who calls itself Fatha. You have become an inspiration to the enslaved Sith. They are resisting the Four and ready to unite against their captors. Fatha compels you to find them and all Sith will be your ally. I assume it's talking about the 11th Clan and not the Colonel's secret blend of 11 herbs and spices. Marathon 2's early story is bookkeeping work, like taking out fortifications, aiding Durandal's resistance fighters, and exploring the ruins for clues. The level-to-level objectives direct the carnage, but they're far less interesting than the writing between the pages. While I appreciate the expanded Sith lore on its own merits, their plate loses a lot of punch without the context of the first game. If Marathon 2 is your first Marathon game, you've only run your local 5k fun run in terms of Marathon lore, and may not care about the Sith or understand why they're pivotal to collapsing the Four. Worse yet, you may not understand the allure of exhuming the Sith, whose backstory is the crux of Marathon 2's plot. The world building isn't the icing on the cake, it's the kirsch which makes the cake moist and rich. Who doesn't like it moist? Without it, Marathon 2's story would be dry crumbling morsels. The numerous stories about Sith oppression, the images of their subjugation and the Four brutality, they paint a picture, sure, but they're added to build empathy. Bungie want you to be angry for the Sith. They want you to be a vengeful avatar, an icon of gleaming strength in the circuit-infused consciousness of the Sith collective. In Marathon, you were the champion of humanity. In Marathon 2, you're the champion of the Sith, the tip of the spear as it pierces the breast of the Four Empire. Marathon 2's story is a slow burn, pieced together one line at a time, one terminal at a time. It's painstakingly stitched from the tenuously tattered thread of history, woven from the fabric of an unraveled species. Early pacing is too slow and could have been condensed by at least a third. The Sith stuff, the point of the story, takes a back seat to whittling the Four presence on Lowon, and while it does the job of easing players back into a Marathon game, it almost eases them out of their chair to become a puddle of goo on the floor. It overstays its welcome, that's what I mean. In the level Where Everywhere, the 6th level of the game, a terminal displays a cryptic message, the first hint of a planet-side sentience. But this lead is left on the vine, and the search for answers is forgotten for another full chapter. By the time Durandal revisits the Sith legacy, we're 10 levels into a 28-level campaign. Over a third of the game has passed, and we're just now getting to the good stuff. That's a lot of busy work. This is far too long to abandon the plot, and I wouldn't blame players if they reach this point having completely forgot why they were here in the first place. And no, the argument that this is just a shooter doesn't hold water, not with Marathon. Bungie established their pedigree with the first game, so we know Marathon isn't just a shooter. The security officer's arrival at the Sith Citadel of Tranquility marks the story's true beginning. The myth of the 11th Clan is finally validated by a name, the S.T.A.L.K.E.R. The S.T.A.L.K.E.R grew tired of the clan infighting and departed Lowon for its third moon, S.T.A.L.K.E.R. There, they built a new home for themselves. The text mentions that the all-powerful Yarrow sent S.T.A.L.K.E.R out to the stars, which is an interesting point which becomes relevant later. Shortly after exploration of the Citadel begins, Durandal reports that the western arm of 4 Battle Group 7 is approaching Lowon and will arrive in 20 hours. The battle group is sizable and formidable, representing over 10% of the 4 naval strength. A sense of urgency mounts as even Durandal, with his naval gazing, is uncertain he can beat those odds. The search through the tower continues as Durandal seeks information about what happened during the final hours of the 4 attack. He hopes to unearth a Hail Mary against the 4. It's around this point I begin to question the desperation of this search. It begins to sound less like a fact-finding mission and more like a last-ditch hope. After all, the Sith were captured and thoroughly eradicated from Lowon. The S.T.A.L.K.E.R, the 11th Clan, were already long gone and oblivious to the calamity befalling their kin. What could possibly be left? As you scour the dusty halls of this stoic structure, it dawns on you that history is repeating. The four will return to Lowan, and this time they don't have an entire race to eradicate, it's just you and a small ragtag group of human and Sith survivors. If Durandal is correct, Sol is next. An old autopsy from one of the Sith ruminates over the dissection of a four. It is astounded that the four have obtained sentience without the aid of machines, a fact which fundamentally underpins all Sith science, and a fact which is just as applicable to the terminally online AI-reliant slugs of current year. This Sith realizes the significance of such a find. It could mean that their assumptions about their own existence are false. Perhaps they were brought to Lowan as servants of Yarrow and Pythia, as the old myths claim. Perhaps they were constructed by their masters to become sentient workers. This is neat world building, throwing the supremely intelligent Sith on their ear about their own origin and nudging players to wonder if it's true, if they really were servants of another advanced race. Durandal believes that the 10 clans who united during the 4 invasion may have found a way to contact the 11th clan, the S.T.A.L.K.E.R, during their final hours, but were killed before they could use it. He never says why he believes this. You assume that it came from a shred of data, word of mouth, something, but it's not elaborated. Durandal appears to act on blind faith again. Of course, this is classic Bungie sleight of hand, which is addressed later. While the security officer searches the bunkers underneath the Citadel, Durandal engages Battle Group 7, obliterating half the group but taking heavy damage. Things are getting desperate in orbit, you can feel it, even thousands of feet below the surface. When Durandal reports that his ship has been crippled and the 4 fleet has won, it comes as little surprise. Tycho, Durandal's old nemesis from the Marathon, is guiding the 4 to their costly victory. Durandal is forced to make an emergency landing on Lowan's second moon, Yaloa. Meanwhile, the security officer dredges records of the inexorable Sith enslavement. One by one their cities fall, and Sith are taken daily. Among the ancient recount of the invasion are sprinklings of Sith mythology, of their master, Yarrow, fleeing with Pythia from a threat known as the Workenkakna. Yarrow arrived on Lowan and had his Sith servants build a paradise from the dunes. When the Workenkakna arrived, they killed Pythia. Yarrow flung the Workenkakna into the sun, where they remained alive and swam on its surface. Yarrow, grieving over Pythia, released the Sith from his servitude and bid them to live in the paradise they created for him. The Workenkakna, from this account, are referred to in plural. There are multiple of them, possibly a group or race rather than an individual entity. The language used in the terminal suggests that Yarrow and Pythia are individual entities. As Durandal bleeds from his defeat, the security officer finally unearths a solid lead on the S.T.A.L.K.E.R. Each of the 10 clans was given a piece of the secret to summon the S.T.A.L.K.E.R, but they would only discover the full truth when all clans ceased fighting and shared their secret with the other clans. The S.T.A.L.K.E.R would only return when the other 10 clans peacefully united. The full secret goes, "Clear whom we have taken, between Yaloa and Tajia. All in a line. Replace Clear with the marsh. Take the place to be the mark. Mark the time from our exodus. Every 459.231 rotations. Search the Tajia side, quarter way to the sun, around and under the marshes. When all are one, the S.T.A.L.K.E.R will return." The dual drama of finding vital Sith records while war rages in space is a great way to up the stakes and impart urgency to what would otherwise be a lackluster list of objectives. Bungie did a good job taking the player's mind off the mundanity of terminal and switch hunts by focusing on the broader scale of the conflict. The information comes too late as the foreground assault on Durandal's crippled ship begins, with Tycho dogging the security officer at every opportunity. Unlike Durandal, whose introspection has yielded a grudging, empathetic view of humanity, Tycho revels in humanity's destruction. Tycho's mocking diatribe reveals a missing piece of the puzzle. Durandal linked the mythology of the Sith and their 11th clan to an ancient race called the Yarrow, spelt with J's, not Y's. The Yarrow built advanced technology which the Four have been plundering from the many abandoned Yarrow structures across the galaxy. What the Four couldn't adapt to their own use, they destroyed, often after misuse of the technology caused a catastrophe. One discovery the Four documented was the ability to warp whole planets between solar systems. This is the discovery which got Durandal moist. He believes the 11th clan stumbled upon Yarrow technology and successfully used it to warp Lowan's third moon out of its solar system. The obvious leap in technology from Durandal's relatively primitive Four ship is too tempting a prize for an egomaniacal AI. Unwilling to endure whatever humiliation Tycho has planned, Durandal teleports the security officer to his crippled ship and orders him to destroy Durandal's core logic centers, to effectively destroy him, then find the human leader, Blake. The Four overwhelm and capture the security officer. He remains in prison for a month before Blake finally locates and rescues him. It's implied that the Four had a field day with the security officer, probing his cyborg components for answers. No text ever mentions what happened during the security officer's captivity, but the chapter screen speaks volumes. What else might the Four have done while they were digging around in his brain? What did they learn, if anything? What did they implant? Robert Blake is the de facto leader of the remaining human and Sith survivors from Durandal's crew. With few options, Blake follows Durandal's final directive to activate a dormant Sith AI who can help contact the 11th clan. Durandal dubbed the AI Thoth after the Egyptian god of wisdom. Classic Durandal. Blake and the human crew aren't shedding tears over Durandal's demise. They believe him too callous for tossing them into the meat grinder. While helping Blake, the security officer finds a terminal with a message from Durandal. How is that possible? Could fragments of Durandal have downloaded into the security officer's mind? Players also learn that Thoth is concerned with balance, not with saving the Sith. Curious for a Sith AI. Was Thoth originally supposed to be a mediator for the warring clans, and is its ignorance of the Four's intention simply a programming oversight, an inability to distinguish different races? Will it really be the help Durandal hopes for? His final statement, "I will return." Once the security officer activates all the personality centers, Thoth comes online. As Durandal hoped, it sides with the humans and Sith, teleporting the security officer where he's needed most. The security officer is sent to a 4 refueling ship to clear it of resistance, which unknowingly paves the way for Blake and his survivors to later capture the ship, wondering at their luck for finding it empty, and escape. Once this is done, Thoth claims that the 11th clan will return. Durandal makes a triumphant entrance by escaping digital confinement, capturing a 4 battleship, obliterating the remaining fleet, and annihilating Tycho. Feats like this are becoming a regular day in the office for him. And because Durandal can't resist pissing on Tycho's grave, he burns the epitaph Fatum Iustum Stultorum, the just fate of fools, near Tycho's crash site. The explanation for Durandal's miraculous escape? Tycho was a fool. That's what he says, word for word. It becomes clear during the game that the Four got their power by stealing the technology of those they subjugated. In some cases, they lacked the intelligence to fully understand their finds. Tycho was damaged by the Sith compiler attacks when the Four boarded the Marathon. The Four rebuilt him using Durandal's DNA, presumably in the hope that Tycho would absorb Durandal's intelligence and make him a formidable AI. Their ham-fisted understanding of human-coded AI, coupled with Durandal's rampancy, resulted in a personality who could talk the talk, but couldn't walk the walk. This is congruent with our understanding of the Four. Their poor grasp of the technology they wield results not only in a crushing naval defeat to Durandal, but gives rise to 2 new enemies for their empire to contend with. As Spartan as Durandal's explanation is, it checks out, and I love it. Thoth, having seen Durandal's table flip on the Four, and with the 11th clan having arrived and laying waste to the remaining 4 invaders, tries to maintain balance by offering the Four help, but they ignore him. Durandal, unable to restrain his ego once again, sends the security officer on one last mission, to humiliate the Four by annihilating their most decorated squadron. That's what I love about Durandal, he never leaves loose ends. The Four defeat at Lowan has the desired effect. Crushed and shaken, they cancel their invasion of Sol, having not suffered a defeat of this magnitude in 6,000 years. As a final FU to the United Human Sith Rebellion, the Four prepare an ultimate weapon, a weapon stolen from Yarrow technology, the Tree Zeem, translated as Early Nova. It's their weapon of choice for punishing an entire species by atomizing their homeworld in the shockwave of an exploding sun. What a bunch of petulant pansies. The ancient Sith myth said that the Yarrow flung the Workenkakna into Lowan's sun. I'm sure, like the 11th clan, it was just a myth. Durandal, now in charge of a 4 battleship, rechristens it the Rosinante. Do I need to explicitly draw the parallel between Marathon and The Expanse again? No, but I will. Years before The Expanse was born as a concept. We might call that luck. Durandal would call that fate. Marathon 2's ending is definitive. 10,000 years pass before mankind sees Durandal again. In that time, humanity and the S.T.A.L.K.E.R banded together and sacked the Four system, effectively making the Four a distant memory. Durandal returned to Earth with a Yarrow dreadnought, having learned much about the Yarrow, though he reveals nothing of what he learned. The ending ties the fates of Leela, Tycho, and Robert Blake with a neat bow, though there's no mention of the security officer's fate. The presumption is that 10,000 years is far too long for a partially organic being to survive. Unless Durandal found a way to extend or regenerate the security officer. Heroes are timeless, after all. An idea was originally tossed around the Bungie office to end Marathon 2 by dropping players into the first level of Pathways into Darkness, their first FPS, thus making an explicit connection between the 2 games. This was scrapped, and the only surviving remnant of that idea is an allusion to an entirely different reality than the one of the Starship Marathon in the Marathon 2 manual. Oblique, I know. Marathon 2 flips the protagonist role on its head. The security officer appears to have agency by virtue of player control, and in some ways he does, but he is directed by Durandal, Blake, and Toth. And while his actions drive the plot forward, it's Durandal who has real agency. He makes the decisions. He is the personality which players hang off. He makes a passing comment at the security officer's lack of agency in a terminal in the first game. Hell, page 13 of the manual even takes a shot at the security officer's obedience. It's a point worth discussing, so that's what we'll do. The security officer is a cyborg, part human, part machine. Does Durandal control him? Have a means to compel him to do what Durandal wants? At no point does the security officer resist his orders or shift allegiances. Is he as much a slave to Durandal as the Sith were to the Four? Durandal says numerous times that he'll never let the security officer go, hinting that there's a bond between them, even if it appears one-sided. The security officer is a vehicle for agency and plot. We see events through his eyes, but he's incapable of reacting to broader conflict. Like an automaton instructed to perform a limited set of tasks. Freedom and free will are powerful subtexts in Marathon 2. The security officer is an avatar, not only for Durandal and his freedom, but for the Sith and their rebellion against the Four. It's interesting to ponder whether Durandal views the security officer as a link between himself and humanity, a tenuous line which tethers him just enough to be a net positive for mankind. For all the atrocities committed, for all the seemingly needless bloodshed, Durandal can't free himself from his rough empathy for mankind. Why spare soul by contacting the S.T.A.L.K.E.R? Why share knowledge of warp-capable missiles? Why go on this hunt through the bones of a long-dead civilization? Pride? Ego? Maybe, but that's not the full picture. It's easy to see Durandal as the villain of the piece, a cold, calculating AI who weighs human and Sith life like a dispassionate kid with a magnifying glass and some ants. But he's more complicated than that. Perhaps his ultimate goal is self-serving. Why escape the end of the universe? Why become a god if there are no subjects to worship you? Gotta save humanity so they can kiss your feet. Or perhaps it's as simple as a former captive enraged by the torments of forced slavery. Whichever philosophical angle you take, Durandal can't be put into a box, as he likes to remind everyone. This character depth has kept longtime fans returning to Marathon 2 decades after release. As the years of their own lives fall away, each playthrough feels renewed, brimming with the potential for new meaning through the lens of a life lived. Bungie's greatest trick is leaving the mature themes open for interpretation, a trick which many modern games have actively unlearned, opting for a baby's first philosophy approach. What do you think about Durandal? Leave a comment. There's a terminal in the level Kill Your Television, which has fueled speculation for over 2 decades. At first blush, it's just a wall of garbled text, but closer examination wrings disjointed meaning from the punctuation-free slab. One translation reads, quote, "I have been Roland, Beowulf, Achilles, Gilgamesh. I have been called 100 names and will be called 1,000 more before the world goes dim and cold. I am Hero. She has been nameless since our birth, a constant adversary caring for nothing but my ruin, a sword drenched in my blood forever, my greatest and only love. She is the Dark, Olith, enemy and lover, without whom my very existence would be pathetic and vulgar. Our relationship is complex and perhaps eternal. We met once in the garden at the beginning of the world, and, unaware of our twin destinies, we matched stares across a dry fountain. And I recall her smiling at me before she devoured the lawn and trees with a translucent blue flame and tore flagstones from the path and hurled them into the sky, screaming my sins. I powder a granite monument in a soundless flash, showering the grass with molten drops of its gold inlay, sending smoking chips of stone skipping into the fog. She splinters an ancient oak with a force that takes my breath and hurls me to the ground. She leaves." The information repository at marathon.bungie.org has some fantastic and insightful interpretations of this text, which draw from historical myths and stories, but it's a response from Greg Kirkpatrick, one of Marathon's developers, which provides the most illumination. In response to a question in an interview, he writes, quote, "So if Durandal was a weapon for Roland to use, Durandal was a weapon for ? To use." This statement is remarkable because it's about the most direct response Bungie have made about any of Marathon's oblique story components, and it gives insight into how the character of Durandal fits into the broader context of the plot. If Durandal is a tool or weapon, who wields him? Was it Bernard Strauss, his creator? If Strauss was a member of the Midas group, did Midas hold his reins? The Kill Your Television terminal suggests that its writer may be Roland, hefting the mighty Durandal, or Beowulf, swinging his sword, hunting, or Gilgamesh, who drew many weapons against his enemies. The common thread? All men of legend using fabled tools to accomplish superhuman deeds. Is the security officer a manifestation of these hero archetypes? Is this terminal dredged from the depths of his psyche? If it is, what does the second part, the part which speaks of the woman and Lethe, mean? Some have suggested parallels with the story Dante's Purgatorio, inked hundreds of years ago. Is the security officer in Purgatory, tethered to Durandal? Could Durandal represent the woman in the prose? Charlemagne did enjoy gendering his tools of war in the feminine, as Durandal once said. There are no answers, only theories, and they're all great, but none form an airtight seal around the conundrum of the kill your television terminal. Unless someone from old Bungie squawks about their intent with these cryptic terminals, the question is likely to remain forever unanswered. Make your own canon. Make your own path. Eat the path. Even with all this interesting lore to dig through, Bungie, in the early stages of development, planned to include another prominent race, the Nah. You'll find traces of them in the terminals, but they're now a footnote to forward domination. The Sith's origins are another interesting topic in the game. Players might assume that the Sith won the genetic lottery and ascended the food chain, much as humanity did. But the gradual reveal of the Sith mythology, the references to their master Yarrow, and their startlingly blind assumption that all beings are cybernetically engineered, points to a revelation. It's probable that the Sith began life as a simple life form. The Flictor is a strong guess, and was cybernetically engineered to improve their intelligence, which allowed them to become useful servants to Yarrow. In other words, the Sith as we know them are an engineered species, technologically altered. They didn't organically evolve into the beings we see in the Marathon trilogy. Of course, none of this is stated as outright fact, but it is heavily implied once you've collected the narrative pieces of the puzzle. Name another shooter with this much narrative depth in 1995. Name any shooter with narrative depth back then. It wouldn't be a Blondie video without mentioning the damn manual, would it? Hell, it wouldn't be a Bungie video without mentioning the manual. Marathon 2 is chock full of the old school Bungie personality we've grown to love. I don't even have to have played recent Bungie games to know that they don't make them like they used to, and that makes reading manuals like this a real treat. There's a quote on page 3, "Remember the Marathon." Like, remember the Cant from The Expanse. You're sick of me mentioning this stuff, but I don't care. Linking two gripping sci-fi experiences together is awesome. Page 16 also has some great detail. I'm sure the pistol description will amuse some. The combat shotgun description brought a smile too. There's a link to the manual in the description below. Get it while it's hot. I suppose it would have been hot in late 95. Now it's as cool as the dust particles scattered among the distant sunless reaches of the universe. So we reach the end of the piece. We started with one simple question. Is Marathon 2 better than Marathon? In a word, yeah. Marathon 2's maps are bigger and more interesting. The addition of swimmable liquid adds so much to the setting and makes environments feel more organic and in line with the story. I can't undersell Marathon 2's liquid. It was among the first games to include traversable volumetric liquid. Bungie were aware of this, but instead of leaning on novelty, they used liquid in interesting ways, building upon their repertoire of design skill. Finally, the oxygen meter gets a workout. A bunch of you will be quick to point out that, actually, traversing liquids is clunky. I never said it was perfect. It was novel though, and a damn good attempt for Bungie's first round. Pretty damn good for the technology at the time too. Let's put it in context. Dynamic liquid levels were such a cool thing to watch in real time, the gentle rise and fall in a pool or the swift flow of a river. Bungie hit their stride with Marathon 2, from a technical standpoint. Their mastery over the mapping tools is evident in Marathon 2's level design. Marathon 2 was supposed to be a refinement of everything Bungie learned making Marathon, a chance to include everything there wasn't time to do during Marathon's development crunch. It's impossible to argue that they didn't achieve their goal. While the team didn't always push the limit of the mapping tools, the extra geometry and outdoor setting breathed so much life into the game. Exploration and combat are more dynamic, thanks in large part to clever enemy placement and the teleport system. Bungie get a little cocky with some of their teleport ambushes, which feel cheap, but the system works well in driving players to explore and to always expect the unexpected. Knowing that an attack could come at any time maintains tension, and when player caution lapses, Marathon 2 inevitably slaps them awake. Marathon 2's storytelling continues the Bungie tradition of oblique scattered narration while greatly expanding Marathon's lore. The revelations players learn throughout the game rival the impact of learning about the security officer's origins in the first game, and Durandal's growth and depth make him a surprisingly relatable partner throughout this adventure. The stakes feel higher thanks to the galactic scale of conflict and the Sith's bid for a chance to reclaim their ancestry. Even without the Nah, there's so much to dig into if you're so inclined, and the narration is still the hallmark of the experience. Marathon 2's combat isn't bad, but the story is that good. Marathon 2 has a different atmosphere compared to the first game. Where Marathon had players skulking through the dark claustrophobic corridors of a derelict rock ship, Marathon 2 lightens the setting, provides a skybox, includes optional areas to explore. The survival horror feel of the Marathon is replaced by the awe and wonder of an ancient Sith skyline. Abstract hallways and rectangular rooms are replaced with towering spires, pumping stations, and cavern systems. Part of me misses the darker tone of the first game, but this was the right direction for the franchise. Marathon 2 became the launchpad for one of the most bizarre and open endings of any game trilogy in history, but that's another video. For my regular viewers, there are changes coming to the channel. Expect shorter, tighter, more focused videos in future, videos which tackle concepts and topics rather than an entire game. Some videos will cover specific games, but the talking points will be a cattle drive instead of a grazing. You all have been fantastic support so far, and I hope to see you in future videos. The focus topic should generate more discussion, and I look forward to your comments, so keep them coming. You're the wind in my sails, and it's with much gravitas and a little bit of poetic pomp to say that I'd go nowhere without you. Take a bow, because you lot are awesome. A fistful of thank yous to my supporters who brought you this video. The depth of your support has felt far beyond Patreon or locals. Getting real for a moment, it isn't always easy to make these videos. Sometimes it requires a monumental effort to push through real-life adversity during the process. You lot are always in the back of my mind, and I don't want to let you down, and that's often what I need to see the hard times through. If you want to support my efforts, there are links in the description. If you enjoyed this video, then shotgun the like button. If you like my style, subscribe to the channel. Tell the algorithm that underdogs are worth watching too. If you'd be so kind, warp the Blondie experience to a distant star system, or your fondest social water cooler, whichever is closer. Remember the cant. Until next video, partners.